You are listening to the Wholesome Way podcast, hosted by Alexander Lobb. Please keep in mind, everything shared in this podcast is for inspiration only and shouldn't be taken as medical or professional health advice. If you're making changes to your health routines or lifestyle, please check in with our qualified health professional first. This episode will begin in 30 to 60 seconds. During that time, you're going to hear a few words from two of our very generous sponsors of the show with some pretty awesome offers. So listen to this. And now, on with the episode. Welcome back to another episode 10 of season 2 of the Wholesome Way podcast. Today, I have another guest speaker who I'm very excited to have a conversation with, Savio P. Clemente, who is a keynote and TEDx speaker, journalist, two-time cancer survivor, resilience strategist, board-certified wellness coach, and best-selling author of his book, I Survived Cancer, and here is how I did it. After a life-saving stem cell transplant, a true medical rebirth, which is what the doctors were calling it, Savio transformed adversity into a blueprint for adaptive resilience, equipping leaders to convert disruption into discernment and obstacles into strategic outcomes. He's interviewed over 2,000 thought leaders and global icons around the world, including the World Business Forum and the Academy Awards celebration. Very nice. Uncovering the mindset patterns that drive reinvention, peak performance, and sustainable impact. Savio also has created a 7-minute to wellness technique called the ALOHA Reboot for navigating fear, intuition, and performance. Very much looking forward to getting into that. But welcome to the Wholesome Way podcast, Savio. It's fantastic to have you on.
Alex, thank you so much. What an intro. I can't believe I did all that. I appreciate it.
Of course. It's always good to hear all of those key milestones and achievements. So, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about them today. So, yeah, but I'd love to kick it off just to ask you about where your journey started on the wellness side of things, because obviously in this season of the podcast, we're talking about building your healthiest form, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about that. But where did it all begin?
I would say I was always conscious of the fact that I was a skinny kid. I grew up in a family where, they weren't the healthiest, but they weren't not healthy either, meaning it was just average. But it was really in college in like the mid 90s that I really got focused on this idea of working out and building muscle. And, back then it was all about how I looked. And fortunately, I went to school in New York City, and like a block and a half away was the gym. So I couldn't say that, weather permitting or train, or it literally was like a 4-minute walk from my dormitory. That's really when I got started with fitness in general. And then I remember following this spin instructor named Alex, and she would go to all the different gyms within that region. And I would follow her because her classes were awesome. She played the best music. I got a great workout. And that's when I really learned about using exercise as a way to relieve stress. I had schoolwork to do and deadlines. So that was really the origin story of that.
Yeah, nice. No, I think fitness is it's obviously so important to our lives. Movement, and I remember when I first came across it, that feeling of endorphins and like getting ready for the day in the morning, and it always stuck with me. Doing a workout in the morning in high school and just feeling refreshed. But
So there's also this idea of community. Like, one of my biggest sort of problems beyond the fact that COVID really halted everything for us is I had exercise equipment at home. I even had like a bike and everything, but I just realized something about myself, that I needed that community. There's something about a shared focus, especially when it comes to the physical body, that I don't think really can be replicated, at least for a personality type like myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps with accountability too, I've found. Like doing group fitness,
Yep.
Especially if you're booking a class or you've told someone you're going to be somewhere, like you're going to be there because you
Yeah.
don't want to let them down, right?
Yeah, and especially the gym I went to, kind of like a higher boutique gym, and they had trainers that were serious. Like they weren't playing around. They really wanted to get in and out, and they wanted you to get as much as you could. So I really like that aspect of accountability, like you said. Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. And then moving into like the work, the workforce and full-time work, how did your fitness, regime sort of evolve? Because as we know, full-time work, it can be hard to slot things in the routine. But yeah, how did your routine sort of evolve? Yeah.
Yeah, I was a after work type of a guy where I like to sleep in. I would hit snooze. So I never really would make it to the workouts during my quote unquote professional life. But afterwards I did. I enjoyed it, and then I rewarded myself with a steam or a sauna, afterwards. And I really felt like doing it afterwards gave me this idea that I could sort of be motivated for like the next day, as opposed to doing it in the morning and feeling like I wasted all that good energy for the work, for the work day. I've, of course, like I have a natural inclination towards finding some reservoir of energy within myself. Like I'm not someone who needs coffee and all that. Somehow I find a way to have it. As I've gotten older, that really comes from now having a disciplined meditation portion of my day. I have like 20 minutes. I've been doing it for over 20 years. If I don't do it, Alex, honestly, I can actually feel a difference, and it's not a placebo effect. I've actually know this about myself. So that's like a non-negotiable for me. I've only not done it when, like we can get into it later, when I'm in the hospital, or if I'm, doing a red eye flight or something like that, then I can't get into the zone in that way. But most of the time I'm doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, obviously I've been doing a lot of meditation more so recently. I've been privy to it for a few years, but yeah, one other thing that I do practice in my meditation is gratitude. And for me, I noticed a huge difference when I haven't practiced gratitude in the morning. It just gives you this life force and joy that you're able to continue throughout the day. Like, do you have gratitude in your practice in the morning in your meditation or anything like that? Or
I have a natural gratitude practice in the sense that beyond the meditation, I also believe in this idea of an affirmative statement, or affirmative ideas, or affirmative principles that guide my day, or guide my week, or guide my month, or guide my year. And so that's part of it. But a great hack that I learned in my trainings, being a board certified wellness coach, is there's a University of Pennsylvania professor here in the States named Martin Seligman. And he talks about, when you talk about gratitude, you should ask yourself, why are you grateful for that thing that you stated, or that you wrote, or that you thought about? Because the why behind it allows you to foster it even stronger, which that to me was a complete hack, to be honest, because instead of just listing like 10 things, which usually it's the same thing, I have food, I have, a body that works, I can walk, and all those simple things that we write. The asking of the why is great, because it's like, well, like I'm not in a relationship, but I know other friends of mine are in a very committed, deep relationship. And it's like, well, why is that relationship so important to you? So it makes you savor that relationship as well.
That's awesome. And with your meditation practice, you mentioned that you can notice the difference. Do you just notice it mentally speaking, or spiritually speaking, or are there physical aspects to this? Because this is a sort of a theme that's been coming up a lot, is the mind-body connection,
It's 100% a combination of all three. I can feel it mentally because it clears away some of the junk or debris, that I've sort of stored into my consciousness. It also, there's a physiology aspect of it where I feel lighter to a large degree, because I think I not only like brain dumped, but I like body dumped, in a way. And then there's also obviously this spiritual aspect. So I remember when I first started, there's so many methods, you know this. There's so many ways to meditate. People have so many lotus position, do mantras, and for me, I made it very simple when I started because a friend told me to do that. She said, just play some instrumental music that you like and just relax. And then I started with like a minute, then 2 minutes, 5 minutes. So now I just do 20 minutes. I've been doing it for, like I said, 2 decades, more than 2 decades. And it's the best thing for me. Of course, I change up, the music from time to time. I have tried mantras and all that, but I'm so cerebral that sometimes I think about like, am I pronouncing that correctly? And I'm like, no, this is not the point. And of course, other people have other uses for meditation. Some people like to go into the infinite bliss. Some people like to, have this sort of state of like, equanimity, where they feel like they can just be one with everyone else. Some people like to do a self-compassion type of meditation, whatever it is. But I think for me, it's really just about allowing myself to be and be present in that moment. So Savio is there, and I do it lying down. And I know people have like lotus position and all that. That's not really what works for me, but it's just being present there and just knowing that I can just float into whatever comes into my awareness.
Love that. Yeah, it's important. Actually, I really resonate with what you said about what works for you, and that can be applied to anything in wellness, physically, spiritually, and that's because people have this, especially with meditation. I'll take that example. People have this sort of preconceived idea of what it should be, like finding a cave and just sitting there and trying to clear your mind, and we can't do that. We can, but it's become more and more difficult with all the devices and vehicles and notifications that we get these days. So yeah, I think that's a really important point is do it your way and experiment and find what works for you.
I kind of liken to the fact of, can someone replicate who you are and what you do with your day? No, they can't. So it's the same thing that applies in your communion with yourself, right? In this field that they call meditation. So why would that even be the same? It wouldn't. So just find what works, what you feel like, test it out. Like, don't just do it and then, don't begrudgingly do it. Do it, test it out and see. And if it doesn't work, then maybe course correct a little bit, but really try to find that sweet spot. And fortunately, I've found it, and I've used other tools to sort of help me along the way with other things that I do. But meditation is really, it's free. It's available to me anywhere, anytime. And at the end of the day, I know it works.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was watching your TEDx talk, which was super, super inspiring, like incredible. Like, it's just an incredible story, Savio. And you're a true trooper, I must say.
Thank you.
So with your cancer diagnosis, so I'd love for you to tell us a bit about that and what you learned about the body and the mind, but mainly the body, and tell us about that experience, if you're open to it, obviously, as much as you're willing to share. And what you discovered about health, and because you would have had a lot of time to think about this stuff. So yeah, I'd love to hear your experience.
I did. So I can say that up until the age of 38, which is when cancer first came into my life, I was living a pretty holistic, wellness-driven, organic food eating, hormone-free, protein-focused individual who was meditating every day. Of course, I had other challenges like professional business partnerships that didn't work out, and that was stressful. So I'm not going to say that my life was perfect, because I don't think, at least for me, that there's such a thing as that, even though I do have perfectionist tendencies from time to time. But I was not taking aspirin. I was not drinking coffee. I don't really drink alcohol. I experimented, very early in college with like marijuana, but that's the only major extent that I've done. I tried some other things too, but that's another story, when I was young. So in all intents and purposes, I was doing all the right things. But basically what happened is that I came from a trip with a friend from, we went to London, Paris, and Amsterdam. And I noticed that in Paris and in Amsterdam that when I would wake up in the morning, my sheets would be completely soaked. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And I just was like, well, maybe it's the weather, but it's not because those countries it wasn't hot. So I'm like, okay, this is strange. So I came back, and then what ended up happening is my stomach started getting distended, getting bigger and bigger. I had those recurrent night sweats. And then I went to go see a naturopath, which is, like I said, I was living that type of lifestyle. A naturopath is just someone who basically analyzes your blood and tells you what deficiencies you have and what vitamin structure to eat, and what foods to eat. So he's like, Savio, he's like, based upon this, he's like, I've seen you for many, many years. It could be a few things, but he's like, I think you should really go into mainstream medicine and go get a sonogram. I'm like, sonogram? He's like, yeah. Went to get a sonogram. They wouldn't let me outside. They wouldn't let me leave. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then they came out an hour and a half later, and they're like, you really need to call one of your relatives to come pick you up. I'm like, I have a car. I have my car. They're like, don't worry about your car. Just call a relative and go to the hospital. I'm like, okay, go to the hospital. And they admit me. And then I find out a few hours later that I have diffuse large B-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the lymphoma was mostly in my stomach area. So that was shocking. I was in the hospital for about 15 days. And then they had to give me my first round of something called R-CHOP, which is a combination of chemotherapy drugs. And fortunately for me, 6 rounds. So I was diagnosed in July, and then December of 2014, I was told I was in remission, and I was in remission for about exactly 10 years before, unfortunately, I had a relapse last June of 2024.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah. Gosh. It's something, I guess, that no one's prepared for.
No.
Is it? Like, you sort of just always have to, I can imagine you'd have to just work your way, like wade through the waves yourself. Is that how you found it? Or did you come across any sort of mentors or people who had been through something similar?
No, interestingly enough, I didn't know anyone who had cancer. I know that's shocking, but it's the truth. I didn't have any relatives who had cancer. Blood cancer does not run in any of my, family genetics, because I asked after this happened. But they say when it comes to lymphoma and blood cancers especially, there's sometimes no cause. Like, medical science really can't figure it out. Not that every cancer has a cause, but lymphoma specifically does not. And I actually saw it twofold. I'm a firm believer that things show up in our lives, and our only option is to meet the experience. So I can't tell you that I was like not afraid that something would happen to me terribly, because it could. But I also knew that if I did not give it my full attention, my full presence, my full energy, even back then, that I wouldn't be able to overcome it. And I had friends, I had relatives who wanted to step up, and my dad was like, do you want me to come with you when you get your infusions? Because for the chemo, it's like 5-6 hours every 3 weeks. And I'm like, Dad, you coming there and staring at me for 5-6 hours is not really going to help me. Like, I'm not built like that. That's just a personality aspect of myself. I'm like, but what you can do is pick me up, because they say I shouldn't drive home, by myself. So he would drop me, and then 6-7 hours later, he'd pick me up. I also knew as well that life is a series of challenges, and there's joys, but there's also sorrow. And this is just a cross I had to bear. And that's how I saw it, as I wanted to make sure that I walked the cross well, without giving away some like religious overtones. I grew up Catholic. I'm more sort of spiritually minded, spiritually open. I studied many comparative belief systems, but that's really what came to me, is just as a young child, they would always talk about suffering and suffering of Jesus. And so I just visually saw it in my head as I have to carry my own cross. And then what also came to me was, there was a scene, I don't know if you saw the movie with Keanu Reeves, called Little Buddha. He played Siddhartha. Yeah, it's a I think it was in the 80s or the early 90s. He played
Okay.
Siddhartha. He played the little Buddha, before he became Buddha. And he was there. He gave up all his worldly possessions. He gave up everything, and he decided to live a very aesthetic lifestyle. And so he was meditating with two other individuals who basically they were living on like a grain of rice or whatever. And he overheard while meditating, if you pull the string too tight, it'll snap. But if you leave it too loose, it won't play. The way is the middle path. And so for me, I just knew for myself that once I get myself out of the hospital after these 15 days and I get my chemo rounds, I would also introduce other modalities. So I did an integrative approach. Back in 2014, some things were hidden, so you had to go and find it. But I knew the best course of action for me was the middle way. And that was the story that I told myself. And fortunately, it worked out well because I was in remission for almost a decade. They told me after 5 years, it most likely wouldn't come back. It did. And then they also said to me that if it did come back, it would come back in the same area, which it didn't. But
it didn't.
It did not.
Okay. Interesting. So I know from the first diagnosis you had, your ALOHA Reboot was born from that.
Yes.
And that's the practice that you've been using since over those 10 years, or
tell us
a bit about how that originated.
I would say I wouldn't say it was the onset of when I got diagnosed in 2014, but it sort of made its way year by year because there was a lot of things. I think I was just living on survival mode, and I did whatever I knew to do best. I did research and I did all these things. This was before AI came into the picture. I used AI during my, during this, relapse that I had. But back then there wasn't really such a thing. And so I think the germination started from there, but it's just a very simple practice about getting sort of focused on self. So A's acknowledging what the situation is, like not pretending, but just really acknowledging. L is for listening. So listen really to your inner voice, that inner thing that speaks to you. O is, opening yourself up to wisdom in all of its forms. H is harnessing. So harness those things that you've cultivated and you've gathered together. And A is just acting, like walk the walk. And most of this really comes from what the Hawaiians practice as a spiritual practice. It's called Huna healing. And there's an offshoot called Ho'oponopono, and that's a series of statements that you could say. Some people do it 108 times. I don't know if I do that kind of thing, but it does allow you to just basically forgive yourself, forgive others, tell them you love them, and just kind of let it be and let it go. Because one of the things that I've learned, I'm a journalist, and so out of the first cancer situation, I decided to interview. So I interviewed about 200 cancer survivors, different walks of life, different types of cancers. And the golden thread that I've noticed was really about forgiveness. There was a thread, and it was not even about forgiving someone that wronged you. It was about forgiving yourself for something that you could or should or might have done. And I just think it just goes back to some of my earlier discoveries about myself and other things that I've unearthed in the realm of human potential, is this idea that if you don't empty this pot, this thing that we have, then how are you supposed to fill it with anything positive or good? You have to keep on. It's like a circle of life. You have to keep on letting go and bringing in. So catching and releasing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I couldn't agree more. It's something where we need to be aware of, that we're always taking on things, emotions, especially people who are more empathetic. Yeah. You strike me as an empath. I'm also an empath. So we see eye to eye there. Yeah. And we feel things that other people don't feel in the room, who might not, and it's not their fault. It's just, they're just not attuned to it because of, their birth chart or, just what their environment, how they were brought up. So especially, people like us, I got to continue to, as you said, release and refill.
Yeah.
like a machine almost, Yeah.
And if you don't do that, then how do you expect good things to flourish, right? Because you're just not allowing that idea of opening yourself up. You're not allowing that idea of releasing what needs to be. I don't know, it seems so simple, but it's not that easy to also practice, because even in today's, when you inviting me here, people are like, do you want the questions before? I'm like, well, you can send me it if that's your style. I'm a journalist, so I have to adhere to certain questions that I ask celebrities and different people that I've interviewed, because we're on a time constraint. But I think there's something beautiful about, the Chinese and Asian cultures really talk about this empty pot, coming in with just an empty pot and seeing where that goes. So it's almost like improv, but not really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just
and
raw
that's hard.
conversation.
Yeah, and that's hard because people want to catch their knowledge. They want to show their expertise, and those things are beautiful. But that's not the way you reach people. You reach people because you made them feel a certain way.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not what you say; it's how you made them feel, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm sure a lot of people thought that after they saw your TEDx talk.
Yeah, a lot of people came up after me. They're like, "You really made me rethink." Because listen, I know cancer is very triggering, and now that I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, which I never even thought I would even utter those words, it's even more triggering, because I literally, since the relapse last June of 2024, I've lost like 8 people that I've known. That's hard to process and swallow,
Wow.
But I feel like I'm here still. And it sounds a little cliche, but I think I still have something more to do. That's the only way I can explain it. I mean, medical science is wonderful. And like I said, I did use other modalities this time around. I didn't do the same thing I did last time. I explored other things. But I think for me, I have to chalk it up to the fact that there is a reason why I'm still here. And I don't think anyone can ever give me that answer. I don't even think it's something that I'm even searching for, to be honest with you. I just know that at this point in my life, I need to create, I need to live, because interesting enough, I'll tell you a funny story. When you get, so since my relapse last June, I've had 14 months of treatment, different types of treatment. So I had stem cell harvesting, stem cell transplant, high dose chemo, and then I also opted to do an immunotherapy, which was an optional thing that my oncologist said that I didn't have to do, because I was, as they say, CR, which is complete response or complete remission.
Okay.
But he said to me, it's an option. There's a clinical trial. It's just an extra insurance policy. And I thought about it hard. And one of my sisters, I have 2 sisters, she's like, why would you want to do that for 4 or 5 months when you just got it clear? And I said, it's because if it comes back, God forbid, then I'll say to myself, well, I should have done the immunotherapy. And then they can't just give me that immunotherapy. So anyway, and during that cycle, you have to be very careful of infections and, anything like that. But finally, after I got my last infusion, I decided to go and get a pedicure, because my feet were just really messed up, to be honest. And I was, it was just me and her. Nobody else was in. I came early in the morning and I told her my situation. She was very careful, very meticulous. And when I explained this to her, she looked at me and she goes, why'd you want to do all that? And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, because she's like, if it was me, I just wouldn't do it. I'm like, really? And she goes, no. I said, because I want to live. I want to explore. I want to maybe find love. I want to create. I want to give. I still feel that vibrancy within me to do that. But it was so amazing, because here I am thinking that I'm just going to get a pedicure from someone who I don't know. And her questioning was so profound, and her reflection on how she felt was so profound for me. And then I realized something, a great truth. Not all of us are seeking the same thing. Not all of us are seeking to live. Some of us are just seeking to just survive. And so for me, the biggest thing right now is not the wound, it's the walking. I can speak to the wound. I can speak to the wound twice. But for me, it's the walking. How am I going to go forward with this? And so I decided to dedicate the rest of this life, however long I have, to focusing on leaders, because the leaders and people who move markets and move business impact not only themselves, but their teams, and their teams impact their families. The families impact their community impacts one person. And so I thought that was the best way I could amplify my message.
Incredible. And what is your main message that you take forward in, you know, the corporate world? Because obviously I can see you've seen this connection between, you know, it starts from top down, right? So I imagine you want to make this impact where you can filter down, and so people are more aware of their health and their wellness and others. So yeah, tell me a bit about how that works, because that's incredible work, and I want to hear how it's done.
Yeah, so I've had the good fortune and the opportunity, because not too many people have it, of interviewing now over 2,000 leaders, change makers on major stages like South by Southwest, Computer Electronics Show, the Global, Wellness Institute, many places, celebrities, Venus Williams, really amazing opportunities. Like I said, I was at the red carpet, the Oscars. Literally, it was like a few months before my relapse happened.
Oh, wow.
And one thing I realized is the fact that, yes, they have a lot of power, and leaders can, with the sound of their voice or their actions, can create change. But when disruption affects your life, whatever that disruption is, health disruption, AI disruption, business disruption, political disruption, my goal right now is that when that crisis is over, but the performance must return, but the old operating system doesn't work, how do you navigate that world? And so after interviewing all of them, and they're just like regular people, like, oh my God, you interviewed Ice-T, you interviewed Venus, weren't you scared? I'm like, no, they're people. They're people with problems. Their problems are just different than ours. But they still have to perform. They still have to, move forward. And so that was really the genesis for me in this next evolution of where I'm at. Because after I was told of the relapse, and I knew my oncologist spent literally an hour and a half explaining the whole treatment cycle, I actually looked at him and I said, Dr. Steinberg, I said, do you really think I can do this? And he's like, yeah, Mr. Clemente, I think you can. I think you can do it. I'm like, okay. Not that if he said I couldn't, I wouldn't, but that reassurance was there for me. And it wasn't easy. I spent 29 days in the hospital. They had to keep me an extra week because I had tachycardia. Every time I would stand up, my pulse would go to 150. They were really afraid. One night they had to send me to the ICU to get norepinephrine because I was just panting. And so it got a little shaky there. And then, I did physical therapy. I did other modalities, like I mentioned to you. I used the combination of everything at my disposal, including AI, which was great because when they would check your vitals and check your blood every 4 hours, they would come in and, wake you up. My hospital was great because within 45 minutes, it would be in the portal. And then I would look to see what was considered abnormal, and I would put it into ChatGPT, and I'd be like, is this a discussion that I need to have with my team, or is this normal process when it comes to a stem cell transplant? So I had an autologous stem cell transplant. So that basically means that it was my own stem cells, which they harvested days before. And so I didn't have to worry about some, adverse reactions happening. Sometimes that can happen when it comes to individuals who get stem cells from, other donors.
Yeah, wow, incredible. And what did you learn about the power of the mind over the body during these recovery, during the first time and the relapse? Like what percentage would you put on it in terms of mental stability and control versus physical healing substances and practices?
Yeah. I think at the time I would probably say 30% at the time to the physical body, because as much as I didn't abuse my physical body, there was a lot of judgment that I placed on my physical body, especially, and I'm not trying to blame society or the environment, but the environment, society that I live in values a body that looks great. It just does.
Mm. Mm.
And that body that looks great to others physically vibrates something to them, whether it's true or not, it says something to them. And so I got caught up in that. But what I realized is after all this, that it's a 50% is what I give my body now. Because as much as I would like to say that, I was focused and I was alert, like I made sure when my, team came in the morning, to do the rounds, that I was alert and awake and would answer questions. I made that an absolute must for me because I just didn't want to defer all my power to them. I wanted to make sure that I was in a relationship with them, and that relationship was something that we both were working towards, the goal that we both were working towards. Because I firmly believe that you need to have some type of autonomy when it comes to that aspect. But I also gave myself grace because I'm like, can I really control my neutrophils? Can I really control my hemoglobin count? No, I can't do any of that. Even if I tried, I wouldn't be able to do it because it's really not possible to do, or at least not possible yet to do. And so I would say I realized a couple of things now afterwards is my body went through war. I went through a metaphorical and a symbolic fire. I know I did because of what I allowed my body to go through and what I surrendered to. And that was the pivotal moment. There was a point in the 26 days in the hospital that I actually, Alex, and I can feel it viscerally now, that I actually surrendered, but not surrendered to take me away, let me pass on, but surrendered to the outcome. I didn't try to control the outcome. I didn't say to myself, I'll get better. I just said, I'm here now. And it was a shift. It was an actual shift that I surrendered to. And unless you are put into that situation, you don't know. You can say it, but it's not the same as actually feeling it. And then I think the other powerful thing for me as well is that, and I can't prove this because I have two sisters. One of them asked me, why am I doing the immunotherapy? I have another sister in California, and she came here recently over the summertime because there was a family wedding. And she said to me, she goes, you were there 26 days? She was like, what were you thinking about? What were you doing? I said, I just slept. She goes, what? I said, I just slept. And that was the easiest way for me to explain that to her. You know why? Because I couldn't tell her that I was trying to be in a state of openness when it comes to my own consciousness. The only best way to explain it is that. And there was a couple of days in there that I remember seeing this giant river and this bridge, and the bridge would collapse behind me. So if I went to the other side, I would not come back. I just knew it. So I just kind of viewed it and knew that that was the truth, but I can't articulate, I can't tell you that that was true. I can't, verbatim swear on a Bible or, swear on some, spiritual text to tell you that's true, but that's just what I sort of felt. So I hope I didn't go off a tangent with that, but.
No, it's a beautiful story. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing. It's when those sort of things, those beautiful things happen, not say beautiful, but like profound things happen, in your psyche, and you can feel, you mentioned that moment when you surrendered and you knew that, okay, this is what I really need to do at this point in time. And it speaks to a lot of a theme that we've been talking about in this podcast that comes up again and again, which is intuition, like listening to your body. And I was really fascinated by the concept that you brought up in your ALOHA Reboot in the TED Talk, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll paraphrase this a little bit, but embracing your inner stranger.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that, because I'll be honest, I don't understand enough yet. So please tell me how it works.
Sure. So I actually formulated. So I started my TED Talk out with an intriguing question. I said, have you ever struggled to recognize your own reflection? Because that reflection that's reflected, there's a stranger that's there. And so the title of my talk was How to Love Your Inner Stranger. How to actually see yourself, right, for who you are, not in a very spiritually bypassing way, but in a very honest way, and actually try to figure out for yourself what's going on within self. And I made it ambiguous on purpose. So if you didn't quite understand, I did that intentionally, because for me to tell someone a truth, even the truth, it wouldn't land. They have to discover it for themselves. So for me, I can speak to my own inner stranger. It's really always sort of felt that I wasn't really grounded in life. Like I had all these sort of ideas, but I never really felt like I was communing with my whole self. I always feel like I was performing, or making sure that I showed a good face, or making sure that people didn't see me sweat. And the how to love your inner stranger is really embracing that part of me that can accept that and can know that about myself, but can also allow myself to evolve and allow myself to be vulnerable and allow myself to be seen. And so that was really the genesis of why I even created that idea, because it was born out of this desire to really feel like you can make friends with yourself. Like you don't have to be an enemy. You don't have to keep fighting to and about and above and around yourself. You can actually befriend it in a way.
Beautiful. That's a really profound realization to come to. It kind of reminds me a little bit about the concept of the ego. I don't know whether you obviously know about the ego and that sort of concept. Is that sort of how it is in terms of, is that a good comparison, or is it more
no, I would think it's more loose, because I think when you talk about the id and the ego, it's very intellectualized, right? It's very, let's understand this, let's try to put it in a category, let's try to, and nothing against, Freud and Einstein and all those geniuses of our day. But what I think when it comes to human potential, which my life is part of that human potential studying that I've done, in part, in terms of lived experience, in terms of the trainings that I've done, the learnings and the books that I've read, the other content that I've consumed, I think it needs to be more looser, because I think human beings, I include myself in that process, obviously, are very complex. And they say to a large degree, we're very discordant. So discordant is we're just not really attached to the truth. We just aren't. And so some Buddhists will say, and some Vedic scholars will say, that the world is full of Maya. The world is full of illusion. And what I've learned throughout this process of life is that the illusion is, the changing is an illusion. But the absolute truth, which I think to some degree, whether you believe in a soul or you don't, I think we're all trying to strive for just a peaceful existence. And so you can say that the absolute truth, one of the tenets, is peace.
Definitely. I just read Rupert Spear's book on You Are the Happiness You Seek. I don't know if you've read that one.
No, I have not read that one. No.
It's a short one, but it's fantastic.
Really?
There are a few concepts that are difficult to understand. Like he basically his message is that you are awareness, and you alluded to it earlier, which is like the soul. We call it the soul, and we aren't an athlete. We aren't a journalist. We are just we just are. And so it's this concept of saying I am, rather than I am Alex, or I am a podcaster. But there's just, I don't know, there was just something beautiful about it that really spoke to what you said, is like we know that we're trying to seek peace, because we are peace, but often we're on this journey to find it and to seek it, but actually it's trying to seek us. It's already here. Have you experienced that? What do you understand about that in terms of what you are seeking was actually just inside all along?
Yeah, I think it dovetails beautifully into my keynotes that I give, which is about clarity and resilience and this idea of pressure. Because at the end of the day, there was a great episode, and this, you're probably a lot younger than me. So there's a show called The X-Files, and you probably have seen it.
I know it. Yeah.
Okay. So there's this episode, if you remember, he unfurls a Janaya, a female genie, and he's granted 3 wishes. and he thinks really long and hard because she's a very cunning genie, Janaya, and she would literally take what they say, and she would say, "Are you sure?" They're like, "Yeah." So he wished for peace, and what did he get? He was the sole person on earth. Everybody else was in a time stand. There's nothing moving. And she's like, "Well, that's what you wanted." He goes, you know what I wanted. And she's like, "That's what you said." And she's like, "That's how you create peace." So I think peace is something we should all strive for. And I think there's a lot of chaos in the world. And I'm not saying don't think of peace or don't look for peace. But I think for me, I look for clarity, because clarity will always outshine anything else in your life. Clarity for self, clarity for others, clarity for the world, clarity for the community, clarity for where it is you want to go.
Absolutely. And I think you can definitely apply that to even just making physical changes in your body as well.
Yes.
So I believe from what I've written and from what I've researched and read and spoken with people is, it all starts, and you've been saying this too, it all starts from within, know thyself. And you said that in your keynote, and that's where it starts, right? You cannot possibly make long-term change to your health or longevity if you don't understand who's inside, because you'll just be constantly trying to do things and working against it rather than working with it. And also reflecting what nature's giving you as well. You mentioned the word surrender, and that's a huge part of it too, is going with the flow and just surrendering to what nature and the universe is giving you. And I always like to say, there are no problems, there are only opportunities. So
100%. And it's the same thing that I echo in my keynotes. It's this idea of what is actually leadership. Leadership is running, a 20,000 employee company. Of course, that's part of leadership. But leadership is just who follows you, who are you, who are others looking towards for some semblance of like masterfulness, or some semblance of someone that they can actually emulate. That's what leadership is. And so when I speak about leadership, I always speak about it in those grassroots terms, because people have this assumption, just like back in the day, people would have this assumption that creativity is only about doing a movie, or no, creativity is anything that's comes from the mind and the heart and spirit and something that you formulate. That's what creativity really is. Those things are beautiful and wonderful, and some people are gifted in doing that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't tap into it and recreate that for yourself, because that's part of creativity.
Yeah, creativity, it's a big one. It's one of our vital elixirs of life, I think, that we've all forgotten since we were a child. And it's part of the reason why I started this podcast, because I've always been craving something creative. That I can show, not necessarily validate myself, but just something that I can make with my, figuratively, my hands or my voice in this case, and sharing wisdom and knowledge in the process, and learning myself. Like, it's just a win-win, really. But
I mean, you even mentioning this idea, well, us talking about creativity, but this idea of an elixir, because I found creativity in the first time I had cancer, and even the second time with the relapse, is what I did is I reframed the chemo. I saw it as an elixir. I didn't see it as poison. Yes, it ravages the body. Yes, there's side effects. Yes, I have some neuropathy in my feet and my hands, but at what cost? And so I said to myself, let me use this as an elixir. This is really saving me. This is helping me. This is coursing through I'm allowing it to do what it's designed to do. I'm not fighting it. And so I reframed it as, like, if you're someone who's very religious or someone who believes in those types of, thought processes, I saw it like manna, like an actual sacred food from the universe. Because if I resisted, I wouldn't allow it to really do its job. And so that's a form of creativity right there. And like I was telling a counselor who's there, because she's like, Savio, honestly, she's like, I've talked to a lot of people in your situation. She goes, I never met someone like you. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I wanted more context, right? Because I don't like praise for praise sake. Like that doesn't do anything for me. And she's like, the way you're handling all this. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, other people have lost their battle with the first time they had cancer. I'm still here and I'm still trying to, live my life. I said, at the end of the day, I only have two choices, right? I can either do what I know I need to do and just, get on with it. But I faced the demon. I know what's on the other side of it because I faced it already. So it doesn't startle me. It doesn't scare me. Although I will tell you, scan anxiety is a real thing. And that was nerve-wracking to go. I probably had like 4 or 5 PET scans. I know it's crazy.
Wow.
I've had like 4, CT scans. I had 2 bone marrow aspirations. Those are very painful. But at the end of the day, I know I have to do these things because I want to get to the other side. And the way you get to the other side with anything is that you take, as the famous philosopher Lao Tzu says, 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. So I knew I had to take at least 1 step. And so I took the 1 step every day, even though I didn't like drinking, the contrast and being injected with, the dye and all that. But I knew I had to do what I had to do. So, yeah.
Beautiful, Savio. Thanks for sharing. You've got some serious, perseverance and control. Very inspiring. The world is lucky to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Alex. I think with all of us, I think we only have 2 options, right? How are we going to respond? And the bigger question is if we're going to respond. Just like that, person who did my pedicure told me. She's like, I wouldn't. And she was like emphatic about it. She was younger than me. She's like, no, I just wouldn't do it. I'm like, really? It didn't even occur to me. I didn't even occur. Usually I think of people not doing treatment when they're later in age, which I can understand. But she was young and vibrant. So I was just surprised by that response from her.
Yeah.
No, but I learned that's when you have to be open to wisdom in any form, in any facet, that you get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the word you used there, respond versus react. That's also come up a lot too. And there's a big difference, you have complete choice of how you respond. You don't have to react in primal ways, because you have perspective. Yeah.
And that's the same thing with leadership, with the, leaders that I coach and, the keynotes that I give is this idea of like, okay, you can have composure, you can have clarity, you can make those decisions from that standpoint, not from this hurried standpoint of what the role that you are working in is trying to tell you to do, right? You can maintain that level of calm. And it's hard when you think of it as something external, but when you internalize it, when you embody it, and you make it part of, your everyday, it gets a little easier.
Beautiful. So in this podcast, I always love to bring in something practical for people on, especially, coming out of so much wisdom and experience and hardship that you've conquered. I love to invite you to share something that someone could maybe take on, not necessarily who are dealing with cancer, but maybe they are, or maybe they're thinking about their health more seriously. What is one thing that you can say that can help people, build their healthiest form?
I think there's power in pause. And people have used this phrase, so this is not original to me. But there's something powerful in the silence. So when my sister asked me, what were you doing? I just said sleeping. To be quite honest with you, it wasn't just sleeping. I was still and silent at the same time, physically still and silent. Not that I was silent so I could hear something, and not that I was still so that someone could awake me, but so that I could actually fall deep into space. They often say individuals who've been fortunate enough to have the overview effect, where they've gone into space and they've seen Earth from a different vantage point. It's quiet and still. And in that quiet and stillness is the germination of ideas, of creativity, of love, affection. So once again, it sounds simple, and most of my teachings are, or most of the things I speak are, because I think that's really things that won't change. So hopefully that answers the question fully.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm a big believer in that too. And I think what it really comes down to make it effective is just being able to slot it into your routine,
Yep.
consistently, right? It's just making it a habit of trying to get that stillness, that rest, the active recovery, I call it, because we don't, rest isn't the only, sleep is not the only type of rest. And that's what you've just said there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
And rest is also, and this was hard for me, but the last 14 months have taught me this. Rest doesn't mean that you are not in action. You're in action of something much deeper. It's just not external action, but that can wait, because who are you hurrying? What are you hurrying for? Especially when you're in recovery, like I was. So that's a fallacy that I unlearned, and I'm getting better at it. So now I give myself permission to rest, to actually deeply rest with that. And like I said, unless you've been through some type of trauma, whatever it is, and most of us have been through some kind of trauma, we don't really fully understand that concept until it sort of is thrust upon you.
Amazing. Well, Savio, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm very grateful to have met you and had the chance to talk about this and hear about your experience. And yeah, I just say thank you. And I'm rooting for you, and I wish you well in everything that you're doing and everything that you're bringing to this world. So yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Alex. I really appreciate it. And to viewers, if you want to follow me, you can go to my website, Savio P Clemente, CLEMENTE.com, or follow me on social media at The Human Resolve.
Fantastic. Cool. Oh, and one more thing, I do have some bonus wrap-up questions, which I almost forgot, but we'll if you've got time, we can slot them in.
I have time.
Fantastic. Cool. So number one, what is your number one guilty pleasure?
My number one guilty pleasure at this point in my life is chocolate. And interestingly enough, it never was. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if a relapse creates chocolate cravings, but it definitely does for me.
There you go. That's so funny. Most people are saying chocolate to that question.
Yeah. I just was.
I am too. I'm a big fan of dark chocolate.
I was never a coffee drinker, so chocolate and anything like that, cafe and all that, was just not something I did. But it's a very indulgent reward for me. So yeah.
Absolutely. The book that changed your life.
The book that changed my life would probably be, oh my God, there's so many, but I would say one of the biggest ones is A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. It's an old book. And in it, there's a quote that she has, and she says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our biggest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, fabulous, gorgeous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're playing small, doesn't help serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel intimidated by you. You were born to manifest the glory of God within you. It's not within some of us, it is within all of us. And as we let our light shine, we allow others to let theirs as well."
Whoa, I just got goosebumps up my spine. That's mind-blowing.
And I read that when I was, I think, 21 years old. And it stuck by me. It stuck by me. And as you can tell, I recited it. And I don't really recite a lot because I believe in the empty pot. Like I said, I come in a situation with just an empty, and it's hard to do because we all want to grasp our knowledge, right? We want to grasp our expertise. But it served me well. But that one is just an innate, it's an innate quote that just fills me. And so I remind myself of that, even after being a cancer a double cancer survivor now because I know cancer, the word itself, is triggering. And now when I tell people I survived cancer twice, they think, all these things pop into their head. So I know it's triggering. So I remind myself that I don't have to shrink. Because sometimes I feel that way. I feel like, do I have to shrink because they lost somebody? But I don't. I can be an example of people that what's possible, that hope is possible, that reinvention is possible, and that we can find some way to continue. And if I can be an example of just that, then I did something.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And finally, the biggest life lesson that you've learned to date. I know you've shared a lot in this conversation, but if there was one thing that stuck out, what would it be?
I would say probably for me, the biggest life lesson, I'm culling all the years of experiences and the highs and the lows. Oh, I got it. It was something that I learned. So this is not something that but it's that even if you find fault in truth, don't discard the truth. Just acknowledge the fault, but hang on to what resonates. Because what people do is they say that's a lie and they discard it, and then it becomes nothingness. But in that lie, there is a semblance of truth. So you don't discard the truth, you apply it. You see the error in the truth, but you don't throw it away. And I challenge myself with that, not on a daily basis, because I'm not confronted by that a lot. Although things are very polarizing in the world. I live in the United States of America. That's all I'm going to say about it.
And a journalist.
And a journalist and a coach who, speaks to, executives and leaders and, so, but I will say that has served me extremely well because I'm going to be really truthful. I would think that. I'm like, oh no, that's just nonsense. That's bullshit. And I would just discard them or discard that particular thing. And yes, there is error in that. I'm not saying look beyond the error, but I'm saying look deeper in the error to see the commonality that you share with the error, Instead of judging the error, see the commonality you share within it. So that just popped at me. I'm sure there'll be more, but at the moment, it's the only thing I have.
At this point in time. Fantastic. Very wise. Well, Savio, thank you so much for sharing those. Is there a final message that you have for the listener today?
I would probably say the final message is that, and it's something that is really, I would say it's the core of what I speak with. Is everyone knows about resilience, bouncing back, but I speak about adaptive resilience. Now that you bounce back or you're in the moment, how flexible are you? That's really the key. How flexible are you in that moment of said bouncing back? And so I just, I would invite listeners, viewers, to really think deeply about when it comes to life and things being thrown at you, how flexible and malleable can you be? And what truth can you unearth, even if there's error in the truth?
Amazing. I love that so much. Thank you so much, Savio.
Thanks, Alex.
Of course, you've shared all your links, and I'll put those in the show notes. So everyone listening today, if you resonate, if you want to reach out to Savio, or just definitely have a look at the TED Talk. It's a good one. It's really, really seriously good. So please check that out. And Savio, until next time, I'd love to have you again.
Thank you.
But until then, thank you so much, and God bless, and I wish you well on your journey.
Thanks, Alex. I really appreciate it.